The woods were never silent, not really. Even in the stillness of dawn, when the mist clung to the treetops like a shroud, the forest breathed with a life of its own. But after everything that happened in the last encounter, the survivor who now returned to these woods felt a different kind of presence hiding behind the rustling leaves. This forest held secrets he had only begun to understand. Every shadow seemed to watch him. Every broken branch felt like a message. And now, stepping into these depths again, he carried the weight of what he had seen, and what he had lived through. He wasn't the same person who first entered these woods out of curiosity or thrill. That version of himself had been replaced by someone sharper, haunted, and strangely connected to the creature that had spared his life. There was something between them now, something he didn't fully understand. It wasn't trust, not exactly. But it wasn't fear anymore either. This time, he wasn't here to run. He was here to learn. Because rumors had surfaced. Rumors of strange movement in the forest. Rumors of something, or someone, stalking the creature people called Bigfoot. And if those rumors were true, then everything he thought he knew was about to change. At first, the forest greeted him with familiar signs. The musky smell of pine, the sound of a distant creek, and the low whistle of wind threading through the branches. But after several miles in, he found something unexpected: footprints. Not the massive ones belonging to the creature he'd seen before, but smaller. Lighter, almost hesitant, not adult, not human, young. His pulse quickened as he traced the impressions with his hand. Each print was about half the size of the ones he'd previously encountered, but the shape was unmistakable. A juvenile Bigfoot. The thought sent a chill through him, not because of fear, but because of what it implied. If there was a young one, then there was a family. A group, maybe even a hidden society living just beyond human understanding. And if rumors of hunters were true, then the stakes were far higher than he had imagined. He followed the tracks deeper until a faint coppery scent hit his nose. Blood, fresh. His steps slowed. The air grew heavier, dense with tension. And then, just ahead, barely visible through a curtain of foliage, he saw something huddled against the base of a tree. A small figure, trembling. A young Bigfoot, wounded, its fur matted with blood along its side. The creature lifted its head weakly, and in its dark eyes, he saw the same intelligence, quiet, ancient, and wild, that he had seen in the older one. But now it was clouded by pain and fear. He froze, not wanting to startle it. His heartbeat hammered so loudly he thought the creature might hear it. But before he could even take a cautious step forward, a distant sound cracked through the woods. A radio click. Voices. Boots. Not hikers. Not rangers. A tactical unit. He dropped behind a fallen log just as shapes moved between the trees. Black uniforms, helmets, gear too specialized for anything resembling a public operation. These people weren't here to protect the forest. They were here for the creature. The wounded juvenile whimpered softly, and for a brief moment, the survivor feared the sound would give them away. But the tactical unit didn't need to hear it, they already knew. They moved with purpose, scanning, signaling, spreading out in a formation that said they'd done this before. Many times. He watched as one of them knelt and examined blood on the leaves. Another adjusted the scope of a tranquilizer rifle, though the syringe inside looked far from harmless. Whatever they planned on doing, it didn't look like rescue. Then the forest erupted. A roar echoed across the valley, deeper, louder, filled with fury and terror all at once. The ground vibrated under the force of it. Birds exploded from the trees. Every muscle in the survivor's body went rigid with recognition. The adult Bigfoot was near. The tactical unit reacted instantly, shouting commands, raising weapons, forming a perimeter. The wounded juvenile struggled to its feet, limping, desperate, but it didn't know where to run. It was cornered between its fear and the approaching threat. And then he saw it, the adult Bigfoot emerging from the shadows like a living mountain. Towering, powerful, with eyes burning like embers. But there was something more this time: desperation. Protective rage. The kind that comes only from defending one's own child. The standoff lasted seconds, but it felt like an eternity. The unit opened fire with non-lethal rounds, though the force of each impact shook the giant's frame. It bellowed, swiping at the air, breaking branches thicker than a man's arm. The forest shook as if an earthquake rolled beneath their feet. The juvenile cried out. The survivor knew he couldn't interfere, not directly. But he couldn't stand back and do nothing. He began to move, circling wide behind the tactical line, knowing their focus would be on the creature, not on one unarmed human. Every step was a gamble. One wrong move and he'd either be caught in the crossfire or mistaken as another target. A flashbang detonated, bathing the forest in white heat and thunder. The adult creature stumbled, clutching its ears, roaring in disorientation. The juvenile collapsed in shock. And in that chaos, the tactical unit advanced. He acted on instinct, sprinting toward the young creature, scooping it into his arms despite the sheer weight of it. It wasn't small, not truly, but adrenaline lent strength he didn't know he had. The creature whimpered but didn't fight him. Maybe it sensed he wasn't the threat. Then he heard it, another command from the tactical leader: recover the juvenile. Take the big one alive if possible. Alive, if possible. Those words echoed like a death sentence. The adult regained its footing, knocking aside 2 soldiers with a single sweep of its arm. Bullets, rubber or otherwise, hit it again and again, but it refused to fall. It planted itself between the humans and its child. The survivor watched in awe and horror as the creature fought with a kind of fierce nobility that had nothing to do with savagery and everything to do with love. He ducked behind a thicket with the juvenile in his arms, whispering soothing sounds even though he knew the creature likely didn't understand his words. The forest offered its own cover: fallen logs, moss-covered stones, dense ferns, but the tactical unit was sweeping quickly. He needed a distraction, and the forest delivered. The adult Bigfoot let out another earth-shattering roar, hurling a soldier into a tree with terrifying strength. A second team member fired something, larger, metallic, a dart with a heavy thwack, and the creature shuddered, blinking rapidly as the sedative struggled against its massive physiology. Its movements slowed. That was when something changed. The roar faded into a low, agonized groan. It staggered, its knees buckled, and for a moment, everything went quiet except for the labored breathing of the fallen giant. The juvenile let out a soft cry, reaching toward the limp silhouette of its parent. The survivor's heart twisted painfully. He couldn't leave them, not like this. He scanned the ground and spotted a flare gun, dropped by one of the soldiers who'd been thrown earlier. He grabbed it, aimed skyward, and fired. The flare shot up with a blazing arc, bursting into a bright red bloom that illuminated the entire canopy. Instantly the tactical unit shifted. Alarmed and confused, they searched the tree line, unsure what threat the signal represented. Was it backup? A call for retreat? An enemy? That hesitation was all the survivor needed. He gathered the juvenile into his arms again, pushing deeper into the forest while the unit tried to reorient. Branches tore at his clothes, roots tripped his footing, but he kept going, driven by instinct and determination. Behind him, he heard shouts, orders, then the distinct sound of retreating boots. They weren't giving up, just regrouping, but he had bought time. After what felt like miles, he finally stopped beside a shallow cave tucked into a hillside. The juvenile clung weakly to his shirt, its breathing ragged but stable. He gently laid it down, checking its wound again. It needed help, real help, but bringing it anywhere near civilization was impossible. He sat beside the creature, listening to the distant hum of helicopters beginning to sweep the forest. More were coming. This wasn't some rogue group. This was organized, funded, hidden. For years, people had hunted Bigfoot not because they wanted proof of its existence, but because they already knew. The secrecy wasn't about disbelief. It was about containment, control, exploitation, and if a war was brewing, it wasn't Bigfoot that started it. Humanity had drawn the first battle lines long before anyone realized. The juvenile rested its head against his leg, exhausted but alive. He stared into the darkness of the cave, feeling the weight of everything that had happened, and everything that would come next. He wasn't just a witness anymore. He was part of it now. And the forest, with all its secrets, was no longer just a place of fear or fascination. It was a battlefield, a sanctuary, a world with rules humans had no right to break. As the night deepened and the searchlights swept through the trees like predatory eyes, he made a silent vow. He would protect the creature beside him. He would uncover the truth behind the hunters. And he would stand between the shadows of the forest and the people trying to tear them apart. Because after tonight, one thing was certain. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of a war no one saw coming.